So, are individual or political rights somehow incompatible with economic or collective rights? It's clear that some systems focus more on political and civil rights. And this is a liberal democracy, right? Where it's sort of the wild capitalism and say whatever you want kind of democracy. Other systems focus much more on economic and social rights, communism, for example. If pre-modern societies tend to focus more on the latter, more on economic and social rights of the collective, what does this mean for the future of democracy? All of this, though, might be a false dichotomy. In other words, there's no reason to pit these two concepts against each other, political and civil rights versus economic and social rights. Closer inspection suggests that the two sets of rights aren't irreparably opposed. Looking at lists of political economic rights in international law, you find significant overlap, from the right of a people to self-determination to the right to create unions, both political and civil rights, as well as economic and social rights. These are also mutually reinforcing. And I would encourage you on the first topic here, international law, to go through the international covenants on political and civil rights and the international covenant on economic, social, and cultural rights. And you'll find lots of overlap. And we do this in the human rights class. So the second point here is that these are actually mutually reinforcing to a certain degree. According to the Dalai Lama, for example, both groups of rights are necessary since, quote, a society cannot fully maximize its economic advantage without granting its people individual civil and political rights. Okay? And a lot of this goes back to modernization theory, where having these civil and political rights strengthens civil society groups, and then they are able to push the state in the right direction. Further quote from Dalai Lama, at the same time, these freedoms are diminished if the basic necessities of life are not met. So you can't have political and civil rights that are meaningful unless you really have economic and social rights within a state. The right to work, the right to housing, the right to food. Nobel Prize winner Amartya Sen agrees. Political rights can make social and economic rights more likely. Like where open debate changes societal cultural practices in ways that make people healthier. And Amartya Sen, of course, is famous for the study of famine and how famine doesn't occur in democracies. So famine is obviously a deprivation of the right to food, right? In democracies, and there's a great work by Amartya Sen on this, in democracies you don't have famines because of the information flow, because people are free to speak up. And so people know when the preconditions of famine are coming, and the state can do something to ameliorate the situation. Now, in reality, there's mixed evidence on the relationship between regime type and economic growth, as I mentioned way back when. There's anecdotal evidence that suggests that non-democracies might even be better, but the empirical evidence slightly favors democracies. So anecdotal evidence, empirical evidence, what it comes down to, I suppose, is what sort of non-democracies we're talking about and what the intents of the dictators or the non-democrats involved are. I just stated the obvious, but now you've got the obvious stated on recording for a while. So we've got social versus liberal democracy, these distinctions that we made before, where social democracies focus more on certain social and economic rights, ensuring certain social and economic rights, and liberal democracy focuses much more on ensuring unconstrained political and civil rights. Almost unconstrained, right? Everyone knows you can't yell fire in a crowded movie theater, or I guess other crowded places. But besides that, you can pretty much say what you want. Ask the KKK. They say what they want. So, a big question here. I'll probably throw up a big political culture question in the discussion section. And that one is, can democracy promoters create a democracy-friendly culture, and how? So, if I don't throw this up, I'm going to put up a set of answers in a second. So I'll stop here and throw up a set of my answers.